So the third resource that we're going to talk about is West Virginia Phonics. And looking at our poster from earlier in the morning, it looks like many of you are not familiar with this program, which is exciting because I think this is one that you will want to go back in August and immediately get your hands on and start using with your students in intervention. And it looks like several of you have some experience with it, and even hopefully one of you has some expert knowledge that you'll be willing to share with us throughout the lesson. So when you look at the West Virginia Phonics intervention materials, it has many of those same components that we were looking at from this morning. It is a skill-driven intervention, and that's probably my favorite thing about it. Depending on, regardless of whatever skill it is that your students are working on, you can go to this resource and pick up any lesson and start with it. You don't have to do these lessons in sequence to build it up. It does provide that phonological warm-up, which we know is that base down there for building up all of those skills to get our students to be strong comprehenders. And it provides students opportunities to build, read, and write those words. This one does provide a great fluency component as well. It's scripted, explicitly laid out, and there's very little prep that you will need to do other than pulling the resources together and having them centrally located. When you get into the Google Classroom, you'll see that I've provided two different links for you. If you'll just click on one of those links and we'll look at one of the lesson examples. So this is a free resource that you can utilize with the caveat that at any point this resource could be taken down off of the internet. So when you get into it and you see that it is something that you're interested in, my suggestion would be to go ahead and download it and get you some hard copies and get them put into some notebooks. So you can just click on any one to look at. They all visually have the same format there. It gives you some warm-up activities, even providing you with the list of words that you would want to utilize. It's got that phonological awareness section. It gives you the letter sound correspondence piece as well. It provides you with a little bit of background information about what you're doing within that lesson, and it provides you a list of words to utilize. So you're not having to sit there and think, okay, I'm working with CVC short A words. I need to come up with a list of words for my students to read and write. All of that's already provided there for you. Then you see it gives you a big section. Again, we recognize that I do, we do, you do component that we saw in the first two pieces that we looked at. It gives you word building as well, again, following that I do, we do, you do piece. It does give you some dictation piece. What you'll notice in these earlier lessons that you're looking at just dictating words and phrases, and as the skills progress a little bit, they're dictating actual sentences as well. And the best part about it is it provides you with some type of text application. And if you'll scroll a little bit, it gives you 5 days worth of lessons. So each one, and it will tell you if your students were already successful on this part of the lesson throughout the week, you can skip on to this next lesson. Stop right here on this page. So with the different stories that you'll find with each pattern, it gives you the skill-specific words that your students will be exposed to. You'll notice that these are also the words that they're reading and writing from the actual lesson itself. And you'll notice it does that with, it's got 3 different stories there. And then, again, this one is for short A, so you would expect it to be something that is very basic, very decodable for your students. You'll recognize pretty much most of the sight words that your students have already been exposed to are within that little short story as well. And one way that I utilize these in my Tier 2 classroom was I would have the kids read it, we would highlight the words, they wouldn't just read it, we would talk about the story as well, so there's a lot that you can do with that piece. And for first grade and for second grade, I think these are pretty well ready to go resources, but luckily Karen has done some additional pieces to go along with this to support the kindergarten teachers.
We, at Longview, we really wanted to make sure that the Tier 2 had words that went along with what they had explicitly taught in the phonics progression. So they didn't want there to be words in there that had consonants or vowels that they had not explicitly taught within the classroom. So because of that, what I did is I took the framework of the West Virginia, and then whatever unit we were on, like for example, this one is 10.2, but if it was like 5.1, whatever the letters and sounds that are on the Weekly Wonders assessment, that's what I plugged in to the pieces. So I'm gonna show you, and you're going to have these, we put these all in the Google Classroom, the ones that I made, and I gave you one of the videos that you're going to get to see. I gave you a copy of the lesson, but I wanted you to be able to see the pieces that I added to it. But you can see at the top, the warm-up, the two phonological awareness activities, they can be edited based on, like if you gave the pass and you noticed that this group of kids is really struggling with this particular area of phonological awareness, you can change that to match whatever that area is that you need to address. I kind of did the same thing every time where it was just substituting and then onset rhyme and then deletion. So I just added in the different words each week, but the activity was the same. So they did the same process every time. So I'm going to pull this down for just a second so you can see the different pieces. So this is the lesson that you have in front of you. I also added in, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, but I added in this handwriting resource. I did a training with the Dyslexia Center a couple of years ago, and these particular handwriting strokes they shared with us. And so we just kept that as a resource with us. So whenever the time for the writing part, if we noticed that we needed some more explicit instruction with handwriting, we would have this as a visual cue to remind us of using the same terminology for how to make those letters. And they really, really liked this year, us doing that. And then for the word reading part, I always just made the cards for them. But before you copy it, I did the dots underneath the sounds and then drew the arrow. So you'd want to do that. There was no way I could figure out how to do that through the document. So I just did it with a marker before I copied it for them. And it says that in the lesson that they'll touch the dots and sweep. So you'll notice that you'll have to do that part of it. And then for the letter cards, whatever they were going to be doing for the word building portion, I put in what letters they would need to be able to do that activity. So you could just copy this on cardstock and cut them out and have them in bags and do it that way. Because I was making this for 7 teachers, that got really time consuming. So what we did is, let me show you. We made this document which had all of the letters, and we did them on cardstock and then laminated them. And even to when we got into the other digraphs and things that we needed, they're on there as well. And then we kept them in a bag, and we just put Velcro on them, and we made these Velcro boards. So at the top, this is where they would put the letters that it said you needed for that lesson up here. And then my first grade, they just made it here and then slid their finger. My kindergarten used those sound boxes, and when you watch the video, you'll see what she used for that. But this looked the same. And actually, since it was the very end of the year, she had all of the letters up there and had them pull out the ones that they needed. But really, you would only want to put the ones that they needed for that particular lesson, so they're not having to spend too much time searching through them. And so then all I had to do each week is add in if there was a particular one where they needed an uppercase letter or something like that. Actually, they had them all. It was more for first grade when we got into vowel teams. I would have to make a sheet of the vowel team that they needed and then just give them that. And they had all the rest of their letters in the bag. Does that make sense? Okay. And then this part here, because when you're talking about building words, you don't want to forget that the reason we're doing this is to build meaning. We want them to understand that the reason they're reading this word is because this word has meaning. And so I always, for the word building part, there was always a visual for them to go to. So after they built the word, they found which picture represented that word. In the video, you'll see that the teacher used this part for the word reading part, which you totally can do it the way that she did it, but you won't see all of the pictures for the words that are the word reading, because these are specifically for the word building part. So any word that they're building, there's a picture to go with it. And one of the things that I really liked about this too is that if they were just changing like the beginning sound, you could say, look guys, just because we changed that first letter, we've got two different words that mean something completely different just because that one letter went from a B to a D or whatever. So they really could understand that how important those letters are. You know, one change, you've got a whole different meaning. They could talk about multi-meaning words. You'll notice if one of the words that they're building has more than one meaning, I have both pictures represented. So they can talk about both on there. And then this part here is what they use for the letter sound correspondence. And this is where the teacher is saying a word, and if they hear that sound, they lift up the card. If they don't, they keep it down. So every lesson has this piece in it. And you'll see it multiple times throughout them because, like for me, I didn't have them all in there. I just kind of pulled from the last lesson and pulled it out. But because I wanted you guys to have everything you needed in that one document, it's in there for you. So for this, they would say E, E, B, E. So they say the letters, they say the picture, and then they say the sound, just like she did in that Foundations video. It's that exact same format. So this is what the kids get, and then the teacher has the large one to show. So this would be the one that the teacher holds. And then for the last part, the text application, I always tried to find at least one fluency piece. Some are better than others. It was just kind of me locating, so that might be something that you add to it. But we did make these sentence trees for every lesson, and the kids really, really loved this. So this was a great way to scaffold a connected text sentence. So the kids had this sheet in front of them. Sorry, you can't see the whole thing, but we would give them index cards, and they would take the index card to where they could only see one part of it, and then we would choral read it together. The B is on, the B is on the B is on the green, and then goes down to the full sentence. The bee is on the green weed. And then after we did that, I would always say, okay, Anna, what did you visualize when you hear that sentence? What do you see in your mind? So we added in that comprehension piece. So they were always having to tell me what they saw after hearing that sentence. And then I would usually pick a friend. I was like, okay, now that we've heard the whole sentence, read the sentence, Judy, and then one person would read it. And so we did that with 4 different connected text sentences. And you can see on the lesson under the text application, it says that practice connected text tree sentences, and then where it says practice reading connected text from reading folders in the Google Classroom, I put the resource that they used for purposeful practice with that. And so it was just connected text sentences. I usually took the ones from the Weekly Wonders assessment and then just kind of changed the words around. So there would be a sheet of connected text sentences, and how they did that with their third rotation was their independent reading time. And so the kids would just get with a partner and they would take turns reading those connected text sentences. And so I had them just pull those out for that part. And then we also made fluency drills. We had a fluency folder where it had just the CVC words that went along with whatever letters we had explicitly taught. And then I made a nonsense word sheet, and then I made one that had blends. And so they kept those in a folder, and they had those little sand timers, and they would time each other for a minute. They had them in sheet protectors, and the kids just circled where they left off, and they would do that 2 or 3 times just as a fluency practice. And so all of those pieces that you see there will be in the Google Classroom for you.